How about this weather, everyone?
It's too cold for my liking. This is not Texas weather.
Agreed.
Yeah, it is cold. I'm gonna go home and start a fire in my fireplace.
Oh yeah, I saw it's supposed to get in like the teens. I've never been in teen cold weather and I'm not okay with it. I live in Texas for a reason. It should be hot.
I think it was like twice that it was like actually that cold.
I forgot y'all are still young. I'm about to say y'all weren't around in the 90s when it was back in the teens.
Nope.
No, but it's still a little too cold.
I personally love this weather. Like, I'm from Texas and everything, but I love it.
Really?
Yeah, I love cold and rainy weather. I don't know why. It's just like, I don't know. It's weird.
I mean, I like that I get to stay inside, but I'd rather sweat than be cold. Like, I just can't warm up when I'm cold.
I agree with
say,
that.
if you like the cold and the rain, you must like staying inside because I mean, I like being outside. It's too cold to be outside.
No, I love being outside. Like, I don't know. I rather, like, I don't, like, I'm fine with the hot and everything, but I just like the cold. It just feels fresh.
I hate looking like a freaking Eskimo. Like, literally, I be layering, and I look fat as hell, bro. I'm like, I swear, I'm not this big. Everyone's like, damn.
I feel that.
I'm like, nope.
We're like 5 different jackets, layers under your jackets. Yeah, not about it.
He must be running late because it's 4:01. Oh, there he is. That's what you said.
Greetings, class. May the force be with you.
And also
with you.
And also with you.
Yay. Good to see everyone. Looks like there's some folks not here today. Y'all, one thing I wanted to say is that I am probably, I'm not totally sure, but I'm probably going to take attendance next week. You know, I mean, why not? I think that I can do that through Zoom. So I'm probably going to do that. And then also you guys will probably have a quiz the following week on Aristotle. Now, when is spring break?
3 weeks after this week.
It's March 8th.
Is it the 12th? Or is it the 8th? I thought it was the 12th.
8.
I think we're good. I think we're good. Next week, I'm going to plan on taking attendance once. And then the following week, I am going to plan on giving y'all a quiz on Aristotle. But what are we doing today? What we're doing today is finishing up Plato's Apology. Is that right? Let me go ahead and pull up the reading schedule. You will remember that the reading schedule is something that we adhere to pretty closely. Today is the 10th of February. So yeah, we're going to finish the Apology today. And yeah, that's what we're going to do. And so I uploaded today what I'm going to be talking through, or I'm going to be using the lecture note, the lecture notebook to lecture today. I put it up on Canvas a couple hours ago. And so that is there for you. Can you guys see my desktop?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Cool.
Yes.
All right. And today we're going to talk about the apology. We're right here. Okay. And this is also on Canvas. Who can tell me what we talked about last time regarding the apology? Does anyone, what was the most interesting thing that you've learned so far in terms of Plato's Apology?
Well, it's not really him apologizing.
Daniel, okay. Actually, I want someone, I can see you guys. I want someone to raise your hand. Hang on. I thought I could see you. All right. Daniel, go ahead.
It's not really him apologizing. It's Socrates basically making his defense, and he also claims that he's not wise. He is only seeking wisdom from the oracle, basically, who said that Socrates was the wisest of them all. And the way he seeks wisdom is just by asking questions.
Yeah, good. We're going to talk about a lot of that today, but y'all, what I want to draw your attention to the first thing that Daniel just said, having to do with the term apology, and we did talk about that last time, but this is a footnote by the editor on the very first page of the apology. It's on my page 21, and what he says, I think that this is Grube. I'm not totally sure. Yeah, Grube, the translator. Grube. Footnote 1. This is it on the title page of the apology. It says this: the word apology is a transliteration, not a translation of the Greek apologia. That's exactly what I said yesterday. A transliteration is like whenever you take the letters, the characters from a different language, like in this case, Greek, you take the alpha and you just turn it into an A. You take the pi and you just turn it into a P. You take the omicron and you just turn it into an O. So what you have is apologia. It's kind of like, we have a lot of Spanish words in our vocabulary, like taco or hombre. Like if I walk up to you and I'm like, hey, what's up, hombre? You know, I didn't translate the word hombre. I sort of transliterated it and kept it the way it used to be, but imported it into my English language. Are you with me? That's what's going on here. So an apology, an apologia is not saying I'm sorry. It's a defense. Just like, was it 1 Peter 3:15? Always be ready to make a defense, to give a defense for the hope that is in you, Peter says. All right, good stuff, Daniel. Thank you so much. You did a good job of getting my juices flowing. So I'm just going to keep going. First thing I want to talk about today, and this is Roman numeral 1 on your outline, is Socrates' friend, Chaerephon, right? Chaerephon is the one who walks up to the Oracle of Delphi, and we watched that video. If you weren't here last class, it should be on the YouTube channel. That rather R-rated, slightly embarrassing video of the Oracle of Delphi, right? And that was from a movie called 300. It's a graphic novel by a guy named Frank Miller that came out probably, I don't know, 12 or 13 years ago now. Really good movie, by the way. But anyway, Chaerephon walks up to the Oracle of Delphi, and he's the one who's like, hey, who's the wisest person in the world, right? It kind of reminds me of that fairy tale. Was it Cinderella or Snow White? I don't remember, where someone walks up and is like, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? Which fairy tale is that? Sarah Russell?
Snow White.
Snow White.
Okay,
Snow
cool.
White.
Snow White. So yeah, Chaerephon walks up to the Oracle of Delphi, and the Oracle responds to him and says, there's no one wiser than Socrates. Now, y'all, I think, why don't I read it? Because I tell you what, there's no substitute for actually reading the words of an ancient text. And who can tell me what that, do you see the 21A on my little outline here? Do y'all see that, 21A? Who can remind me what that means?
Isn't it kind of like a footnote in it? It'll have like a little thing off to the side.
Yeah, I call it a marginal number. It's not a page number. It's a marginal number, so that it really doesn't matter which translation you have. You could have, like, this translation is probably a few decades old, I would imagine. Maybe there was a new translation that came out last year. It would have the same marginal numbers, so that regardless of what translation you're using, we could all literally be on the same page. Yeah. So go with me to marginal number 21A. And I'm just going to read, okay? I'm going to read a few lines. I'm hoping that we can delve into the text and just read together today a little bit. You might think of it like story time. I want to have story time with my students. Yeah. So I'm just going to start reading. I'm at 21A. Does everyone see that? Who can read? Well, I'll read it. Chirophon. Do y'all see that at 21A? Chirophon. Chirophon. And remember, who's talking right now? Socrates. That's exactly right. It's interesting that Plato's dialogues are all kind of like plays where different characters talk, and that's true. This is a dialogue where different characters talk, but there's one speaker in this dialogue that does like 98% of the talking, and that is Socrates. It's almost a monologue. He says, and so that's who's talking. Who is Socrates talking to? Who is the audience?
The jury.
Jury.
People of Athens.
That's right, the jury. And the jury is made up of 501 slaves. Is that right?
No, free men.
That's right, free males. That's exactly right. So Socrates is talking to the jury, and here's what he says beginning at 21A. You know, Chirophon, he was my friend from youth, and the friend of most of you as he shared your exile and your return. You surely know the kind of man he was, how impulsive in any course of action. He went to Delphi at one time and ventured to ask the oracle, as I say, gentlemen, do not create a disturbance. He asked if any man was wiser than I, and the Pythian replied that no one was wiser. Chirophon is dead, but his brother will testify to you about this. So yeah, that's a little bit about the story involving the Oracle of Delphi. And here's what I think is interesting. Y'all, one of the things that I'm stressing to y'all in this class is this relationship between two things, mythos on the one hand and logos on the other, right? You might think of it like this, myth versus science, myth versus reason, right? And on the one hand, I'm saying that thinkers like Parmenides and Plato, and as we will see next week, Aristotle, thinkers like that, yes, it's true that they do have a project of demythologization. Yeah, they do. They are all about critiquing myths and deities that they think are unworthy, right? That they think are stupid. That is true. But on the other hand, time and time again, you can see various ways in which these thinkers, even in their project of demythologization, right? Even in their project of busting the myths, they still rely on myth. By the way, I don't know if you remember, y'all remember that article that we read about Parmenides? I think it was by a guy named Peter Adamson. And remember, Parmenides is the one who says that being is not this, not this, not this, not this. He's a very rational thinker, right? He's all about logos. And yet, the whole text in which he presents that account is a story that includes deities and gods. So even with Parmenides, he's a myth buster who still relies on myth. Now, am I saying that that's contradictory? I'm actually not. My own view, and I think that this is what Plato would say, is that we should be into the project of demythologizing. Yes, like there's a lot of stupid stories out there that ought to be critiqued. However, myth is also something literally without which we cannot think. I think that Plato would say, and I would say, this is what I wrote my dissertation about, is that human beings need some sort of narrative even to begin thinking. We need narrative for the possibility of thought itself. So even if you think about modern science, right? Most people today worship at the altar of modern science. We tend to think that modern science is the be all and end all, right? I mean, if you want to know what's true, if you want to know what's real, ask a scientist or get a PhD in physics, and then you'll know what's real. We tend to assume that modern science is the be all and end all, the ultimate standard for truth. Well, guess what? Even modern science relies on a prior myth. Actually, it relies on many myths. For example, it relies on the myth of progress. This idea that, certain thinkers in the modern age, like Descartes, Kant, Kepler, Isaac Newton, that these guys they brilliantly came along and they critiqued the older assumptions of the Dark Ages. That is a story. That's a myth. That's a narrative. There's lots of myths that even modern science relies upon. So my point is, yes, mythology, high five to Socrates for smashing the stupid myths. But remember that he also thinks that there is a legitimate role for myths. And you can see that with this story of Chaerephon in the Oracle of Delphi, right? Does everyone see that the Oracle of Delphi is kind of like a mythological creature? Or, I mean, the Oracle of Delphi is connected to myth, right? I mean, there may have been an actual Oracle of Delphi, some female, probably a virgin that was in some temple. Yeah, that's probably true. But there was a myth that was told about her, right? The myth was that she was somehow inspired to know truth from the gods. Well, that's mythology. So on the one hand, Socrates is busting the myths. On the other hand, he's relying on them. I think that's interesting. Okay. And y'all, what is it that the oracle says about Socrates? I'm on Roman numeral 2 now.
That he is the wisest man.
And actually, that's not quite what it says, Sarah, but you're very close. You're very, very close. Can someone help Sarah? Go ahead.
Sorry. Doesn't she say that no one is wiser than
That's
him?
right. So Sarah, do you see the difference between those two things? They're very similar. It could be that one or two other people are tied for Socrates as the wisest, but no one is wiser than he. Good. Okay. Y'all, let's keep going. If we were to keep reading, we would see Socrates, how he walks up on the streets of Athens. And what he's doing is he's giving a defense. He's talking to the 501 free men, the jury of Athens. And he's giving a narrative. He's kind of like giving his testimony, right? Here's the way I roll. Here's the sorts of things that I do in the city of Athens that tend to get me in trouble. And if we were to continue reading, we could read about how he walks up to the politicians. He walks up to and by the way, the politicians are at 21C. Do you see where it says public men? If you were to circle public men in your book, that's talking about the politicians. Then a few lines later, at 22B, right above 22B, he says, I went to the poets, or I guess that's at 22A. He says, I went to the poets, the writers of tragedies and dithyrambs and others, intending in their case to catch myself being more ignorant than they. He's being ironic right there, right? He's saying, I'm going to intend to catch myself being more ignorant than they. Does he think that he's really more ignorant than they? No, he just thinks that they're full of shit. He just thinks that they claim to know things that they don't actually know, where he says, I don't know anything. The only thing I know is that I don't know anything at all, right? And that would be an example, Roman numeral 3, of Socratic irony. Okay, Socratic irony would be a great paper topic, by the way.
Like, what is the difference between that irony and him being arrogant?
Well, so Sergio, I think that maybe the best way to think about that would be I mean, maybe he is being arrogant, but if he's being arrogant, it's ironic arrogance, right? I mean, there's a difference between unironic arrogance.
Right, I'm not like, it's not like he's an arrogant and like he's a bad person or whatever. No, I
Yeah.
just mean like it's not very different to me that saying that and being rhetoric as he says that other prophets are. Like that sounds like a really pseudo humble person, you know.
Yeah. What I think is interesting, Sergio, like if you were to continue to think about that, or maybe to write a paper about this, I do think that he's making some sort of a rhetorical move here.
Mm-hmm.
However, what's really interesting is that it's not the kind of rhetorical move that
Right.
that any reasonable person would think would compel the jury.
Right,
Like
he
that's
goes,
what's kind of weird.
yeah, like he goes the other way, completely the other way.
He does go the other way, and you can tell all throughout this text. I mean, look, let me put it to you like this. Is Socrates afraid of dying?
No.
No.
I don't
Is
think
he
so.
is he kissing the asses of the jury? No.
No.
Like he's not at all like scared of them, or I mean, I don't think he's being an asshole. He's not like pissing them off, but he's not cowering before them in fear.
Is he
And
like trying to make him sound like not necessarily dumb, but like he's trying to make them seem at fault for accusing him?
absolutely, I think that he's making them look like the politicians, the poets, and then finally the craftspeople. Yeah, that's exactly right. He's saying the joke is on you. I mean, you guys think that you're wise, but you're probably like the politicians, poets, and craftspeople who claim to be wise, but actually don't know anything. And here's, one of the things that I keep doing with y'all, and I think that it's good for me to do this in my intro to philosophy class, is I point out lots and lots of different ways in which these texts, especially Plato, I think Plato more than others, or Socrates, in which Socrates or these texts is a lot like early Christian texts. It's a lot like the Bible. It's a lot like the stories that you find in the Bible. And so, for example, if you were to compare this dialogue with, say, the trial of Jesus, I mean, because this is the story about how Socrates eventually gets executed, right? Would you agree with me that Jesus of Nazareth also gets executed? I mean, the gospel stories are largely about that. They're about the cross, and the cross is a Roman torture device, right? It would be interesting to compare and contrast Socrates before his accusers versus Jesus before his accusers, right? I think that you would find a lot of really interesting similarities. I mean, at one point, I don't remember which gospel it is. I feel like it's either Matthew or John. The high priest says to Jesus, "Are you the king?" And Jesus looks at, or maybe he said something like, "Did you say you were going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days?" And Jesus looks at him and he's like, "You say that I said that." I mean, Jesus is like Socrates, he's not afraid of his accusers.
The thing is that, like, also what feels like contradictory about what Socrates says is that, well, to be wise, you gotta admit that you don't know many things. Well, that makes sense. but like he's like so aware of that it makes him so wise, and it makes him like at the same time, to know that you gotta know a lot of things, or maybe not a lot of things, but you gotta know what you know at least, and that's, well, a lot probably, because most people don't know what they know. So
Right.
like he's
Or
like,
Sergio, put it like this: in order to reject lots and lots of positions, you first have to consider the positions and then know why they're wrong. But that's knowing a lot.
right.
Right?
So it's not, yeah, I never meant to like really call him arrogant, but like it's like contradictory but inevitable. It's like inevitable to sound contradictory, because it's like, I mean, like, you really become wise when you accept that you don't know many things. So at the same time,
That's irony. It's irony.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like another example of like irony was like in the beginning of the trial, he tried to convince, I guess, the jurors that if they put him to death, they would lose a very particular wisdom. But at the end of the trial, he says that if they put him to death, many more will come after him. So it's
Amen.
like the opposite.
Yeah, totally. There's tons of examples of irony throughout this dialogue. That's right, Jagger. That's great. Y'all, I want to move on to Roman numeral 5, but before I do that, I just want to say one thing about the poets, because when you and I think of a poet, like, I don't know what you think of when you think of a poet, but I'd be willing to bet that you think of something like what we would call a lyric poet. I'll give you an example. My 13-year-old daughter, recently she went with her friend to Half Price Books, and she, for some reason, usually she buys books on video games or maybe comic books, but she bought a book of poetry. And the poet that she bought a book of is a person named E.E. Cummings. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of E.E. Cummings, but E.E. Cummings is what we would call a lyric poet. I mean, his poems are not long narratives, but the poets that Plato has in mind here, the poets of the ancient world, by and large, are what you would call epic poets. They're poets like Homer, poets like Hesiod. They're basically telling grand mythologies. If you've ever read The Lord of the Rings by Tolkien, or even seen the movies, those are kind of sort of like the poets that are in view here. Of course, maybe you've read Homer. I hope that you have. We did watch that video. That video is the kind of thing that Plato has in mind when he talks about the poets. There's stories about the gods. Yeah, as opposed to something like Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. No, that's not the kind of poetry we're talking about. That would be lyric poetry, kind of like E.E. Cummings. Am I making sense? Now, let's keep going. I want to read a little bit more. I'm going to read beginning at 22E. At the top of the paragraph where it says finally, do y'all see that? I'm going to read a little bit. Finally, I went to the craftsman, right? So he's already gone to the politicians. He's already gone to the poets. Now he's going to the craftsman, okay? For I was conscious of knowing practically nothing. There it is again. And I knew that I would find that they had knowledge of many fine things. In this way, I was not mistaken. They knew things I did not know, and to that extent, they were wiser than I. Now we could hit the pause button right there, and we could say, in a way, Socrates could be unironic right there, right? I mean, like, let's imagine that he's walking up to a shoemaker, okay? And a shoemaker. Well, it could be that Socrates actually doesn't know how to make shoes, whereas this person that he's talking to does. And in that sense, it is straightforwardly true that the shoemaker is wiser than he is. Does that make sense?
Yes, like in regards to shoes.
Yeah, with regard to shoes, that's exactly right. Let's keep reading. But men of Athens, the good craftsmen seemed to me to have the same fault as the poets. Each of them, because of his success at his craft, thought himself very wise in other most important pursuits, and this error of theirs overshadowed the wisdom they had. So that I asked myself on behalf of the oracle whether I should prefer to be as I am, with neither their wisdom nor their ignorance, or to have both. I think that's really interesting and sort of clarifies what's going on here. See, the craftsmen have a certain wisdom and they have a certain ignorance, right? Now, what is the wisdom? Someone who hasn't spoken yet. I could call on people, but someone who hasn't spoken yet today, what is the wisdom of the craftsman?
His specialty?
Was that Michael?
His knowledge on his specialty.
Yes, exactly. So give me an example of the sort of thing that you have in mind.
So, what was his job again?
Whose job?
The guy that Socrates is talking to.
It doesn't say, it just says that they're craftsmen.
Okay, so a craftsman could be like a carpenter. His
Exactly.
wisdom would be with, building things out of wood.
That's exactly right. A carpenter, it could be a saddle maker. It could be someone who makes eyeglasses. It could be a cobbler or someone who makes shoes, right? It could be a metalsmith like we see in The Mandalorian and also in Game of Thrones. Are there metalsmiths in Game of Thrones? I can't remember right now. I think that there might be.
They're called blacksmiths.
Yes. Yeah, they're just blacksmiths.
Yeah. So these are craftsmen, and you're exactly right, Michael. The craftsmen have a certain wisdom. Namely, they know how to make their sword or their shoe, right? That's right. Now that's their wisdom. What is their ignorance? You can tell me what their ignorance is.
Wouldn't their ignorance be to anything that's not their specialty? Because you can't expect someone who's a carpenter to be able to work with metal the same way that they can work with wood. So that
Sierra,
would be where
I'm so glad you said that. That is a very good thought. The only problem is that that's not what it says. See, you got to read the text. Reading is hard. Like, it's really hard. What you said makes a ton of sense. The only problem with it is that that's not what the text says. I want to reread part of the text, Sierra, and just hang with me. So, but men of Athens, the good craftsmen, seem to me to have the same fault as the poets, each of them because of his success at his craft. That's what Michael just talked about. Shoes, swords, whatever. Because of his success at his craft, thought himself very wise in other most important pursuits. Most important pursuits. So Sierra, I think what you just said, which made a lot of sense, would be kind of like Socrates walks up to a blacksmith and yeah, the blacksmith has knowledge about how to make swords or whatever, but he doesn't have knowledge about how to make shoes.
So
And that
like,
makes sense, Sierra. But notice Socrates says other most important pursuits. Do you think that he's saying that like making shoes is more important than making swords? I don't think so. What do y'all think he means by other most important pursuits?
could it be like what
Probably
you're
politics.
saying? I
And
was gonna say what you're
stuff
saying
like that.
before with the wisdom being like knowing what you know and knowing what you do not know. Is it-
Yes, but the question is, I like that. I like, if I understand what you're saying, Sierra, I think that you're right. But I also heard someone else say something, and it may have been Jagger.
Yeah, I said
If you ask
politics.
the question, what are these other most important pursuits? And by the way, that phrase in my book is right at 22E. Yeah, I think that like if you like here's the thing, you could
Did he cut out for you guys too?
Yeah.
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 Oh yeah, I thought that was mine.
Yeah, same.
Someone text him because he might not know. Like he might not be able to hear us as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did he like black out or something?
Oh, he's not in the meeting anymore.
Yeah, he just made someone else a host.
Yeah, I think he just dipped out.
Did he take attendance at the beginning of class?
I think he said
No,
he's doing
he's gonna start next week.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
he
Oh, okay, because I joined late and I got scared.
oh shit, I'm the host now. What's up?
I think it logged him out because it happened the same to me, but it logged me back just automatically. I didn't have to do anything, so I don't know what happened.
So should we just like wait it out for a second? See if he comes
Yeah,
back?
maybe because it's
Yeah.
my Wi-Fi, I think. Since
Yeah,
I'm
he's gonna
driving.
come- he's probably gonna come back because this is gonna be the only link for class from now on.
It's I mean, we still got 20 minutes to class last night. He's probably gonna come back.
Yeah, I think I'll wait a little.
Yeah.
See how.
How is everyone today?
Can y'all hear
Good,
me?
Salone. How are you doing? Salone.
I'm good. How are you, Sarah? Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
How are you? Hi, guys.
Can I be
Do y'all-
heard?
Do y'all know
Yes.
if he posts recordings of class?
He puts them
So I
on
wasn't
YouTube.
here on Monday.
Yeah, all of
It's
his
on
ones are
YouTube?
on YouTube. Yeah, you can
Okay.
literally look up his name and the like all the videos will pop up.
Okay, because I missed
What is
Monday
his
because I was
name?
driving back to school and I emailed him and he never responded. So I was like, okay.
You're supposed to text him. He's a texter.
Well,
He always says that in
Sarah,
class. Text me.
I'm an emailer, Sarah, because I don't check my
Well,
phone.
That's too bad.
Well,
Adapt to your surroundings.
well, no.
Adapt to your surroundings.
At least we're not paging
I
anymore.
don't even have a cell phone, guys. I just use a landline. So there we go. I'm not even in the 21st century anymore. I have a landline, no cell phone.
Hey, I got DSL.
There you
I got
go.
the
What?
slowest. I
Yeah.
got the
Wait, he
slowest
has
I have a
for
internet
mine?
ever.
I should know how to
Good for
use
mine.
it.
Yeah, I have dial-up internet. I have like the same stuff that we had when we had AOL. Like that's basically what I have.
Wait,
CenturyLink.
what's
Welcome to the boonies.
What?
Isn't it like an old version of
Is this
Yahoo?
AOL?
Oh
Messaging?
God.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
like 13 years younger than me. AOL was like the first
Oh.
main internet thing. That and CompuServe. Like whenever everything
I'm
wanna
so
know-
hit big in the
sorry.
90s. that's what we had.
If
I
you
just
want to know
learned
what
a lot.
DSL is, get on YouTube and look up DSL dial tone, and it'll ring a bell.
We're really young right now.
I
How
know,
old is
Sierra.
that
I feel very
person?
uneducated.
Yeah, I do too.
Did y'all have pagers? I had a pager.
No.
Not that old
I know
now.
what a pager is, but I didn't have a
I'm like
pager.
Never.
I had a
Isn't
CD
that for
player.
doctors?
I
You have to
never think of
heard
like
of that.
medical stuff, like off Grey's Anatomy. Oh, I'm being paid or something. Like that's what I think of. Like now it's like
I think
communicating with
I'm the
someone
oldest
now.
person in class, guys.
CD player.
I still listen to CDs all the time.
Oh,
Hey,
that's
I got
play
VHS.
too. I mean, that's like not terrible, but
No.
having a
No, I was
page.
walking around middle
Even still
school
have
with
the
an iPod
Sorry.
Shuffle.
He lost his Wi-Fi.
An iPod Shuffle. Oh,
Yeah.
the good days.
I remember iPod
Bro,
Shuffle.
those are literally the best.
The
Oh my
force-
god.
Oh, I think we're done. I think he said we'll finish it up on Monday.
Did he really?
He
We're
did?
having so much fun right
Yeah.
now.
He
Though.
said that they missed
I-
said, "Oh, I lost my Wi-Fi."
This is very interesting.
Hmm.
So do you guys want me to like end the meeting now?
Telling to you, she's done.
What is it, Jason?
Yeah.
What are you showing? Jason, what are you showing
Yeah,
us?
It's the
can someone read
announcement,
that?
Sarah.
I can't
He didn't announce anything. He said done.
Dang
He
it,
just
my
said,
ops Wi-Fi just
It
went
says,
out. Oh.
dang it.
He said he
Okay.
lost his Wi.
He
It
did?
popped up on my
As
thing
if
that
he
he lost
doesn't
his
say the
Wi-Fi.
F-bomb in class.
Wait, is he gonna like come back or not? Like I don't understand
No.
his text.
Bro,
No,
It
he
says
said
we'll finish it.
did
we'll
you not
finish on
read
Monday.
the mind
"Does
or
that mean we're
the
done?"
canvas?
I'm leaving. I got work.
Okay, guys, this is a great chat. Very nice to meet you guys. Goodbye.
Ending the
Very nice.
Oh god.
Bye.